But we welcomed yesterday, what I would like to welcome again, our young Arise Fellows who were awarded grants made of 500,000 euros each, made available through a grant through the European Commission to the AAS. So it's been a very successful program. We had a large number of applications and we awarded, what was it? 44 grants in 43 different countries across Africa. So it's been a very successful program, and we are going to arrange a seminar program that we hope, a virtual seminar program that we hope all the fellows will attend, to give our new fellows, the Arise Fellows and the APTI Fellows, an opportunity to engage with senior researchers, to get feedback, to get recognition from senior researchers. So we will be approaching all the fellows to participate in the seminar program, and to talk about their work to not only AAS fellows, but we've done it in conjunction with the International Union of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology and the Federation of African Societies of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. So we hope that it will be a very successful and wide seminar virtual seminar series. We kicked it off this year with the opening lecture by Dario Alessi from Edinburgh University, and we stopped for the summer vacation in the south, and we will continue towards the end of January with the seminar program. So I invite all the fellows to please attend this virtual seminar series so that we can give some encouragement to our young fellows, advice to our young fellows. The next person to address us, to give some opening remarks, is Professor Olusola Oyewole, the Secretary General of the Association of African Universities. Yeah. I thought it was here.
I am available virtually.
Virtually, okay.
Yeah.
He's going to join us virtually. He's online, okay.
Professor Olusola, you have the floor.
Okay. Oh, in the meantime, you've got me there. Oh, okay. Okay, I'll jump down so I can see what the speaker. Thank you. Well, welcome, Professor Oyewole. Can you hear us? Thank you. Go ahead. Well, welcome. I think you are muted.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, thank you very much. Let me, at this particular time, on behalf of the Association of African Universities with headquarters in Accra, Ghana, congratulate the AAS on this 14th General Assembly and the special meeting that is holding at this particular time, gathering the scientists of Africa. I want to put on record that we identify with the aspirations of the AAS at this particular time, and AAU is a willing partner in collaborating with the AAS in achieving your various goals. I know that I still have a session that I'll be joining at 8 o'clock formally, and I hope that AAU and AAS will be working together in the years ahead to see to the advancement of our continent. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity to make this brief remark in this General Assembly. Thank you, President.
Thank you very much, Professor Oyole. We look forward to hearing from you later in the session after 10 o'clock. We will be hearing from you again. Thank you very much. You're welcome to stay on and participate in the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the final speaker in this session is Jean Michel Sers, Policy Officer from the Science and Technology and Innovation Section, DG International Partnerships from the European Commission. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to apologize for my style today, but I lost my luggage yesterday, and I'm still waiting for it to be back at the hotel, hopefully tonight. Anyway, welcome everybody. I'm very happy to be here. Dear Professor Felix Tapare-Thakur, dear Dr. Dumisani Timbu from DSI, and dear researchers, dear madams and sirs, good morning to all. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here and to attend this event and have a chance to meet with the fellows and researchers. I'm here about so many times in my Brussels office. It's also my pleasure to participate for the first time in the World Science Forum. I'm happy to take the floor in the name of my Directorate General for International Partnerships at the European Commission. You probably know, most of you, that my directorate manages a big program for that we call the Financial Instrument for EU International and Development Cooperation. This program is called Global Europe, and it's very complementary to other two big programs that you may be familiar with as well, Horizon Europe and Erasmus. So these are the three big programs we use in cooperating with our partner countries, especially with Africa. And within our program, the one we manage, Global Europe, the African Academy of Science is a key partner for the implementation of this ARISE pilot program. And we consider this event today as a new promising step of this program implementation following the inception meeting of June that took place in Nairobi, where we announced the names of all the grantees of this program. So our decision at the European Commission level to support ARISE with a significant budget confirmed at that time the European Union's interest and engagement in science, technology, innovation, cooperation for social and economic development in Africa. We see this program as a key element of our academic and scientific cooperation. Global Europe is designed to support partner countries in the green and digital transitions. We mobilize financial resources for STI and education based on national, regional, and global priorities resulting from the joint programming, because this program is jointly implemented through joint programming dialogues. As far as STI is concerned, we have three priorities within Global Europe. The one is to reinforce the capacities of individuals and organizations. And we consider ARISE as a program falling under this first strategic priority for STI cooperation. The second priority for us is to stimulate, strengthen the local production of solution-oriented knowledge, as well as the upgrading, the upscaling of innovations developed locally. And finally, the third priority for STI cooperation at global Europe level is to support STI governance, STI policies, STI frameworks, enabling more innovations to happen on the ground. Dear attendees, I'm pleased to tell you, it's not a promise like that, but I'm pleased to tell you that our STI cooperation is going to intensify. Because this year, you are probably all aware of the result of this EU-Africa summit that took place in February, and where the two parties agreed on an investment package. This is a huge commitment in a different way of past summit commitments. This one is really to say we have a lot in common, we have a lot of interest to do things together. We're gonna translate that into an investment package. And this investment package, I have no time to detail everything in it, but in this investment package, we have made some commitments in the STI sector. And we are now designing new programs in support of, and I give you some examples, in support of regional centers of excellence in Africa. We are also designing a new program to support space technologies and health observation in Africa. And last but not least, we, as DG International Partnerships of the European Commission, we are preparing our contribution to the innovation agenda that our two continents are committed to make real. So it's not just words, it's really new programs and new initiatives resulting from the summit, also resulting from this high-level policy dialogue on science, technology, innovation that our two continents are involved in for many, many years, for I think more than 30 years. And as far as this dialogue and historic cooperation is concerned, we have always put ARISE as a good model. ARISE is now a pilot program. The future of ARISE is not decided yet, but we hope this different joint commitment from both sides will make ARISE last a bit longer than the initial time. I'm convinced that ARISE will be successful and we can count on your partners' engagement. I'm here also to meet with the ARISE fellows. I'm here to report to my colleagues in Brussels that the program is now at its full speed. I'm convinced that this event today will be a success. I thank the Academy for organizing this General Assembly and COMA events, and I hope to speak to some of you during that week. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jean-Michel. And thank you very much for the message and the new programs that we look forward to. The last person in the session I would call on is our president, who will address us on the role of the African Academy of Sciences in transforming lives through science. You all know him. He doesn't need an introduction. So, Mr. President, thank you very much.
Probably I should wait for the slides to start first. Okay, thank you very much. But before I start, I just need to make one simple comment. There is a senior fellow here, Professor, which one was that? So we have amongst us Professor Mukhtar Toure from Senegal, Dakar, and fellows of the AAS. And as I said yesterday, I acknowledge a colleague, Professor Hirale from Mauritius, who joined the academy in 1993. And I was so impressed to see people at that age and level still coming to annual AGMs to give moral support and intellectual support to the young scientists. So I'd just like to acknowledge Professor Mukhtar Toure, a founding fellow, if you don't mind, you can stand up, sir. Okay. Yeah, these are committed citizens of the continent. Your coming is highly appreciated. I'm sure there are many things you could be doing in Dakar, but you chose to be with them. All the encouragement that they need. And by the way, I was just telling him, what is it that he does that he's looking younger than I am, even though he's senior to me? So it must be all these issues you take upon yourself that, you know, reduce your stress. Because when you are here with the youngsters, you're not going to have any stress. You can only just enjoy the good science they are doing. And that's what makes everyone to go from low to high. So thank you very much for coming, Professor Toure. Excuse me. What I decided to do really is to, my presentation, the title looks good. It talks to what the academy wants to do. But in reality, I will be raising fundamental questions and that I think we are wrestling with. And hopefully by the time we get through the talk, we'll all have a sense of what we should be doing. And particularly for the AS fellows, I really want to provoke your minds so that when we get to the business meeting, you will not say you are taken unawares. You will have seen many questions that I'm going to raise in terms of the future of the academy and how we should structure it to benefit the young ones who are here. So basically, I think the point I'm making, the AS crossroads, what does the academy, do you have the hand one? I prefer, do you have the hand one? Yeah, please. I don't like to be static. Yeah, thank you. So it says the AS at a crossroad. What does the academy want to be? Does it want to be a traditional academy, or does it want to be a fundraising agency? And this is a decision, as I'm saying, that the fellows must make. It's not an easy decision, but it's a question that must be asked if we are going to go forward. Now, I decided to indicate to you an example of what I call the activities of a traditional academy. And so here you have the AS, EU Arise. There's just been a nice presentation about it, highlighting the importance of the Arise program in transforming lives. And essentially, I call that a good example of funding traditional academy. And why do I say that? It's got an international steering committee, which guides it in what it should seek to achieve. It's got, there's respect for partners. Perhaps I'll just pause to say, when Arise project started, incidentally, it was one of those that was on the AISA platform. And we had to fight to wrestle it out of the AISA platform. And thanks to the European Union Commission to say that they would rather work with AAS. They didn't want to work with AISA. So we are forever grateful for that decision. It was actually a milestone in taking the academy forward. And what I like about it, we had a series of meetings, the Director General himself or the office, the Commissioner for Education, Science and Technology, or her representative at the time, that was Mahama Udrago, then plus myself and the then acting ED, and of course, other staff. And we will hold meetings to discuss the future of the project, set timeframes, provide guidelines as to what we want to achieve. And more importantly, there was complete transparency. There was no agenda, we spoke. I can see the EU colleague is nodding his head. There's transparency. And I think if you're going to do science to transform lives, then there has to be mutual respect. There has to be transparency. There has to be the agenda setting must be taken by all, not just one side. So for me, as you can see, it's a clear example of what funding a traditional academy should be, and not the other. If it's a funding agency, who can. But the last one is just so important: trust. Trust is the most important thing in a relationship. Now, then we have the AAS as a funding agency, the old model. And there was no international steering committee for projects. I pushed for it for 3 years. I never succeeded. A handful of people took everything and ran with it. Decision-making by funders and the AA Secretariat, took place, excluding the Governing Council and indeed the academy. And then we had no common agenda setting. The agenda was set by the funders in conjunction with some of their friends within the Secretariat. Grants were awarded without copying the AAS president or the Governing Council. And it's difficult to accept that. I mean, you can't say that's a partnership if there's a funder that will provide money to in the name of the academy, and yet you don't copy the president, you don't copy the Governing Council, you don't inform anybody about the award, but you expect the AAS to take direct responsibility for whatever happens with funds. So decision-making was by funders and the AA Secretariat, and that cannot be a good style or a good relationship if things happen that way. So that's the question I'm asking. Some people say the academy has lost its glory, and this was its glory. Okay, that was the academy's glory, where we just were there. Yes, money was coming, lots of money, but that money was used in a manner that wasn't going to transform lives. It was going to transform, lifestyle of some individuals. So we have examples from the AAS as a funding agency, and this is one of them that I'm talking about. In December 2019, a grant was given to the AAS. It was 9.7 million, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong, I'll be corrected in the next slide. That grant, if not for a fellow who was sitting on one of our technical committees called FRAG, Finance and, Finance and Risk and, committee. Now, he got a document at that time, which he kept, and he assumed that the AAS knew about this. And in the middle of a lot of issues, he produced the document and asked me, have I seen this before? I said, no. I shared it with the other GC fellows, and nobody had ever seen that grant that was awarded to the AAS, but to an individual. And yet the academy was to be held accountable. There were things that happened like refurbishment of old buildings within the AAS campus. And the Governing Council was not involved. The Governing Council was not told. There was no approval. Everything we do in terms of good governance has to be approved by the Governing Council. That never happened. And then we had a new building that was set up at the AA Secretariat. Where on earth have you heard that somebody can come and put up a building on your plot without your permission? So for me, these are serious matters. I don't know about other colleagues and fellows, but these are some of the issues that we need to accept as not the best of practices. So here is the grant that I was talking about. So we have a grant of 9.7 million US dollars that was awarded to the AAS by a funder from the Global North without copying the president or the Governing Council. 9.7 million. Guess what? 700,000 of the 9.7 million was given to the program director as discretionary funds. Is this funding for social justice? That's the question I ask. Discretionary funds is what in Ghana they used to call unaccountable impress. When you're traveling, they give you money. They say, spend as you want. You don't have to bring out receipts. This is what we had, discretionary funds. And I should add that not $1 was given to the academy as, overheads. So is this funding for social justice? That for me is the fundamental question. And I really want fellows of the AS, all those virtual and of course those of you here, to listen to what I'm saying. It's important that we all go back and understand what happened to the academy and not the way stories were presented in the press, and we have no chance or opportunity to respond. This is our moment to respond to the world. What happened to the AS? Is this best practice? That's the question I ask. Would any funder endorse that this is the best way they should do business with Africa? So this is the building. Furthermore, the funders and their allies in the Secretariat put a brand new building on the AS campus without any discussions with the academy or approval by the government. So that's the building down there. The process was absolutely undercover. That's AS. And this structure is a living example of what I call bad science funding. If you can go and it's actually rude because you don't consult the owner of the plot and you put up your bill. So let me move to the next. Now, so essentially, I wanted to share this with the AF. It's just a small piece of the pie. There's a lot more that people can pick up from the forensic audit report, which is now in the public domain. And people, when they get to understand all of this, will get a true story of what happened to the AS, and not what some journalists have written about. Because many times, journalists write their story, they don't come to consult. I have never had any journalist come to interview me. I've got this story to tell. What is your take? How true is it? And none of my colleagues who are here, the vice presidents, members of the governing council, don't have been up. I think one lady who approached us for details of the forensic audit report. Process, provided all the documents to that young lady. Up till today, we have not seen any article about our position, but we gave them all the details of the forensic audit report. So it is important that we take note of the past as we move into the future. The future is bright for the academy. Some people say, let's take AS back to its old glory. I see articles saying, oh, what is it called? Not wounded, some other terminology like that. And I think that it's not entirely true. In fact, we have salvaged the academy, and thank God we have been able to do that. Because now you, the young ones sitting here, can have an academy in the future. If this hadn't happened, and people put up, I don't know what next structure would have been put up on the AS campus. They could just take all our land and build, and that's it. And that's Africa. So I thought I would share this with you. This is the bitter part of the story, but it's important to tell its artists so that people can understand. I'm now going to go to the next phase, which is much better, and that is to share with you some of the initiatives that the Governing Council has taken in order to move the academy forward. So at one of our meetings, that was 27th June 2022, the Governing Council resolved that we should set up regional offices of the academy in different parts of the world. So basically, we agreed to set up an office in Asia, in Europe, and in North America. And there are colleagues in the academy from China in particular who got together and said they were going to assist the AAS to get a regional office in Beijing so that they can popularize and give visibility to the academy and use that as an opportunity for raising funds and doing joint research between Chinese scientists and African scientists. Then we have the Europe office, and our colleagues from Edinburgh are here. Let me say that Edinburgh as a city was the one that was bidding for it through our colleagues who are here, the Royal Society of Edinburgh. So they did indicate their interest to be to host the European office of the Academy, the African Academy of Sciences. And North America, we are still in discussion with our colleague, what's his name, Kito, who was with us in Nairobi. So he is also aware of that, and he'll be having discussions with some of his colleagues from the US in North America to see if they can host that. Now, so with the assistance of the Chinese embassy and the AS fellows in China, we hope to have the Asia office open in Beijing, and they will give us an office. We don't have to pay for it. We negotiated that. And I think that is good. And Edinburgh, of course, hopefully with the support of our colleagues from the Royal Society of Edinburgh, will host the AAS regional office. And the AAS also, the Governing Council has also signed some initiatives, or should I say, some partnerships and outside Africa, and I stress outside Africa because, as I said, we work with all the national academies, including NASA. But we've got a good working relationship with the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, Chinese Academy of Sciences, the Chinese Academy of Engineering, and the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences. Those three actually virtually work together in many instances, even though they are separate academies. Then we have the Royal Society of in the UK. We've done the FLAIR project. Some of you may have been beneficiaries of it, and we worked very well together. It was sad that UK government cut funding, and so the FLAIR project came to an end. And then, of course, again, the Royal Society of Edinburgh, led by our colleagues who are sitting here. And we also work very closely with the US National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. In addition to that, the AS has also created partnerships with universities, and the University of Edinburgh is one of them. I'll come to that later, some of the things that we're planning to do. Tsinghua University in Beijing, China Cultural University, Hebei Cultural University, Hebei University, and Nanjing Tech University. Many of these ones are more, especially the Chinese Agricultural University, Hebei Agricultural University, and Nanjing Tech. They are interested in offering scholarships through the academy to African students who may want to do PhDs as well as postdocs. I was just talking to Shaban in an earlier conversation, the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Yes? May I finish and then answer your question? Yeah, thank you. So the Chinese Academy of Sciences was more than happy to support the African synchrotron project by providing scholarships to African students that can study at the synchrotrons. I think they've got, I don't know how many, whether they are 6 or so, and they were more than happy to support that initiative just through the scholarships. Now, I just said the ultimate aim of some of those collaborations that we're having, we've signed some MOUs with the Chinese universities of agriculture in particular, is to establish a China-Africa Agricultural Science Technology and Innovation Alliance, otherwise called ASTIA. Now, this is an initiative of the African Academy of Sciences and the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences. But again, the Chinese academies work together. So behind the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences is the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the Chinese Academy of Engineering. They work together, but that's the lead working with the AAS. And this will involve agricultural universities in China and Africa, agricultural research councils, institutes in Africa and China, as well as agribusiness and agri-entrepreneurs in Africa and China, including women and youth. The rationale behind this is very simple. China has roughly about 9% of the agricultural landmass. Okay, they have 9%, but they're able to produce 20% of the world's food. In Africa, we have roughly about 64%, and we only produce 10% of the food that we eat. That's not even enough. We have to import food across the whole of Africa. So the issue is, how can Africa learn from the Chinese experience? Most of those who are older will know China was poor, was very hungry, malnourished, but within a short time, they've overcome that. And they've got surplus food that they produce. It's all based on the use of technologies. And so working together across the board, we should be able to transform our own agricultural system in order to produce adequate, nutritious food for our people. Then we have the partnership with Edinburgh. I just put Edinburgh as the city, if I can put it that way. So we have the AAS Royal Society of Edinburgh MOU, which is, as I mentioned yesterday, to assist us in increasing the number of women and social scientists. But beyond that, of course, we also have scientific programs that we can engage with them. But this was what turned me on the very first time when I went to the offices of the Royal Society of Edinburgh, that they've got a lot of women fellows, they've got social scientists. And so I thought this is what we lack. And so we should be able to benefit from their experience so that we can enrich ours too. So we intend to have that MOU with the Royal Society of Edinburgh. Then we have the AAS with the University of Edinburgh. UOE is University of Edinburgh. We've already signed an MOU, and we've established a visiting fellowships program that came to an end, I think about last year or last 2 years. Now there's interest to renew that. And there's a future meeting. There's a meeting in May 2023, where the AAS and the University of Edinburgh will be discussing in Nairobi what future relationship we should have. The focus could be on early career researchers. Should it be on fellowships, programs, scholarships? It's not yet defined. It's only when we have that meeting in May next year that AAS and the University of Edinburgh will define just in what form that our relationship will progress. I know they are already with your university, so they intend to broaden to other parts of African institutions using the AAS. And this is another initiative, the AAS partnership with the U.S. National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, otherwise called NASEM. And we decided to fundraise and to bring Africa and America together. This actually they have been trying to do in the past 10 to 15 years, and it was not successful because there are many Africans in the diaspora, especially in North America, led by the USA. So they had been, literally dying to connect with the African continent and support in the search for technologies that will advance the continent. And so at the end of the day, the AAS NASEM partnership organized the first US-Africa Frontiers of Science, Engineering, and Medicine Symposium from 12th to the 14th of October 2022 in Nairobi, which a number of us from the Governing Council attended. And what was in fact shocking is the fact that when the call came, we received over 900 applications. And out of the 900, we could only take 50 from the USA and 50 from Africa. So it tells you that the appetite for awards, appetite for training is very high on both sides on both sides, whether it's Africa or whether it is the USA. But this shows you the disciplinary areas that were covered at the meeting: artificial intelligence, biodiversity, climate, food security, infectious diseases, and material science. It was a very successful meeting to the extent that the partners, or should I call them the funders, agreed that they will want to have one. They will want to have another one next year in a different AU region of Africa, most likely in West Africa, because I see the Nigerians and Ghanaians were already warming up to host it. So that's going to happen next year. And thanks to the attendees, it was vibrant. It was, I think you attended. Okay. It was really exciting to see again young scientists from America and Africa. Many of the American young scientists had never been to Africa before. So for them, it was refreshing. It was just a joy, looking at their colleagues from Africa and, networking and connecting to do science. This is another initiative. Well, that's ARISE. You've already seen that, so I wouldn't waste your time too much with that. But I must say that thanks to the European Commission, the African Union, I think the awardees may not understand that 500,000 euros per grant for 5 years is a lot of money. So you have every reason to succeed, not the other way around. You don't have any reason to fail. It's a lot of money, you know. So please make the best out of this. And I must say, as I indicated at the beginning, we had to wrestle it out of the AISA platform. It was grabbed. We were told if governing council wants their own grant, one grants, like we must write our own proposals. People we have employed to work for the academy are now telling us that. But thank God that the EU Commission understood the situation and literally said they wanted to work with AS and not any platform. Now, then another project that we decided to undertake, science mustn't just be, you know, mixing chemicals in the laboratory. There's also science diplomacy, and you can use science to address some of the problems that are, you know, of alarming proportions. So you are all aware of the Nile River transboundary dispute between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan. So what the governing council decided to do was to say, how can we use science, and for that matter, science diplomacy, to assist with this? And so there were proposals, competitive grant applications to the inter-academic partnerships, and we wrote one to resolve this. And before that, we contacted the Ethiopian Academy of Sciences, the Sudanese National Academy of Science, and the Egyptian Academy of Scientific Research and Technology. Together with NASAC, we're then going to, if we got a grant, we would work together to see how we can use science and technology to overcome that. Anyway, you can see in the red there, the grant application was unsuccessful. But lo and behold, I met Jean-Claude in Berlin, and I think over a glass of red wine, I started telling him about how excited we were about this project, but we couldn't get the funding. And he got turned on as he sipped another glass of wine and said, let me talk to my boss. I like the idea. I like to see how science can be used in a different way. And so I was there the next day. He said, Felix, or was it the same night? He said, Felix, I think I've got a nod from my boss. And that was the beginning of the good news that he announced yesterday. And essentially what we want to do is to involve all of these people, all these academics, NASAC and the AS. We will convene a meeting of scientists from Egypt, from Sudan, and from Ethiopia. And let them come and make presentations on the multiple benefits of the Nile River water to their national economies and the livelihoods of people. So this scientific level is already one benefit we can get out of it. Jean-Claude is the editor or director, editor-in-chief of the Frontiers series. Many of you who are publishing Frontiers, he's the big boss there. So we can pull out some of the papers and you know, refine them nicely and publish in the Frontier series, whichever journal we have more articles who can publish it. So that's already a deliverable. It's an outcome that we will be happy to do, and that it will be good for the young scientists to have a go at publications in the Frontiers. Then we will, at the end of all that, of course, you know, the Nile water is used for many things, from irrigation, agriculture, to fisheries, food security, transportation, energy, which is caused the problem, you know, and you can go on and on. Hopefully, those presentations will tell us or will inform us the key areas to tackle. But at that level, we are imagining that scientists are always scientists. They're more interested in science than the politics of science. So people will be smiling, they will be talking, and it's good to see, you know, Egyptian scientists, you know, laughing away with their friends from Sudan and from Ethiopia. That's a good start. But the hard part, that's where we need all the men and women with brains, is for the last day, for the AS to moderate a session, saying, we've had a beautiful 2 days or 3 days. What's the way forward? What do we do next? And from there, we can craft a way forward where we say, how do we overcome this problem? So that scientists can meet and have a good time, and yet don't dislike each other because of the politicians. And we think that if we're able to moderate that properly, The easiest way to do it is to use science to provide, evidence, science-based evidence. And the one way to do it is to do modeling. We can get some, okay, I'm told that time is almost up. We can get some modelers to model the height of the dam. At what level is the overflow of water from the Ethiopian side to the rest of the Nile? At what level is it having a negative effect? And if we can get about 3 to 4 modeling, independent of each other, they will know about each other. That will be our role as the AIS to find them to do that. And their results come back, assuming that all those results are saying there will be zero effect, zero negative effect. There is hallelujah. And it will be important to have the scientists from all those places because they have to agree on the methodologies. It's very important. That's the starting point. Once you agree on the methodology and the results come, you cannot reject the results. And that will be another plus. So with that, then, if we get a kind of result we are expecting to get, we will be able to convince the politicians that it's not necessary to be threatening each other. There should be no friction. There should be no tensions. The problem is not a problem. That's what science has said. And I believe strongly that they will accept it. So Jean-Claude, thank you very much for your support and your organization. I'm hoping that we can use this to turn things around, to get more people to come to the table. It's always easier to convince other funders to come down when you have something on the table and when you have nothing. The Kuwait Foundation is there. We can approach them. We can approach the Muslim Islamic Development Bank. Well, 2 of those are critical Islamic countries, Egypt and Sudan. So I don't think asking for money from that side to make sure that the faithful around Islam are happy together will be a problem. I think it will be the easiest thing to do. So hopefully we can get them to come to the table. And I think I should, oh yeah, there are some potential projects. That's actually the last slide. By accident, again, I ran into a gentleman by name Dr. Karamba Diaby. He comes from Senegal, tall, dark man. I met him at a meeting, it was a function, and it was a mutual affair. I looked at him, I was one of the darkies at the far corner. He was a darkie at the other place with 3 other guys. So as we looked at each other, I walked to him and I greeted him, said, where does he come from? He's from, originally from from Senegal, but he's now a member of the German Bundestag, that's German parliament. And he's in the executive committee. He was member of the parliamentary committee on research. He was responsible for DAAD and the Alexander Humboldt Foundation. So I told him I came back. I couldn't have a meeting with him because he was a busy man. But when I came back, I contacted him and we had a meeting on 25th November. He was extremely pleasant. He told me he was overwhelmed that I reached out to him. And he was more than, he then gave me order and said he's willing to help the AAS. So he wants to connect us with the new president of DAAD, and we can write to him and see how we can collaborate. The Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, where he was also, he will, and then BF, I can't recall the actual, I just wrote it as he's got a committee on research, on educational research. No, it is his committee on research and education has an Africa agenda. Now he says that he's sure once he connects it with them to something should happen. And he would like that any move we make, we write to people, we should copy him. That way then, there's transparency and, the people he's dealing with, his colleagues and friends, are more likely to come to the table to us. So this is a future project that I think we can tap into as an academy. And let me conclude by saying, actually, it's better to be doing these sort of things with organizations that are more into research than when you go to other funders that have their own agendas. So I just like to thank you very much for your time, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So that closes this session. You've raised a few very interesting topics and issues, and I suggest we discuss those over coffee so that we can continue with the program before Peggy gets to me. So Peggy, can I hand over to you for moderating the next session?
Good morning all again. Thank you so much for that. And Mr. President, thank you very much for that insight. And I think it's good for all of us to know where we are, where we're going, and where the opportunities are. So thank you very much. I think one of the areas that, I would also want to add to is our collaboration with the United Nations. With UNESCO, with WHO, with UNIDO, where I come from. And we have started some collaboration. Unfortunately, Professor Heisen could have been here from UNESCO because they're also very busy, but I think that's another area to go to, so that, because coming from where I come from, there's so much that we do that the United Nations doesn't know about. And I think they should know about it. And there are a few here who are UNESCO chairs. I think we should harness, those potential too. So thank you so much for that. This other session, we wanted it to be a dialogue, but I'm not sure if I know Professor, you're connected, aren't you? I know Professor Oyewole.
Yes.
You're connected. Thank you so much. I know Professor Oye is connected. Is Professor Rita here, or she's connected? Is she connected?
Yes, please. I'm connected.
Oh, perfect. You're connected. Oh, this virtual, this is the new norm. So thank you so much. And then we have Professor Barry. She's here in the room. So Professor Barry, you want to come forward since you are in Presentia. And then we have the last but not the least is Mr. Long. Are you here? Are you connected? Mr. Long from China is not connected. Okay. Maybe he would later on. Maybe the hours are a bit. I hope he got the time right. Did he? All right. Okay. But we will go. At least we know some of the potentials that available here. So, Professor Barry, are you joining us? All right. Okay. So, Professor, Oyewole, he is as he indicated earlier on, he is the Secretary General of the African Association of African Universities based in Accra. So he is at least two hours. He has to lose 2 hours to be with us. So thank you very much for being with us. But just to kickstart the discussion, we know you're the Secretary General of AAU. Could you please share with us some of the good practices and solutions in higher education, funding policies, and governance systems from advancing the SDG 4, that's the goal 4 for education, and the Africa we want? You've just heard the president of the academy and where we call good funders and bad funders. I want to find out from you, what kind of good practices would you want to share with us, Prof?
Yeah, once again, let me congratulate you for this 14th General Assembly of the AAS. I want to note from the word go that the SDG 4 is on quality education. And the focus is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. Why is education being emphasized? It's because education is important for development. Education is not just important for national or community development. It's important to liberate the mind of an individual. It helps to promote, develop your imagination and make to be able to dream great. Education being emphasized is because education is, yes, education is very important for the development. And what this SDG 4 is saying is that let us promote quality education. There are 9 targets under SDG 4. And quickly I mention the for the 9 targets are the following. Number 1, 4.1 says free primary and secondary education. Number 2, it says ensure equal access to quality pre-primary education. Number 3, it says ensure equal access to affordable technical, vocational, and higher education. Number 4, it says increase the number of people with relevant skills for financial sources, meaning that ensure that by 2030, there is substantial increase in the number of youths and adults who have relevant skills, including technical and vocational skills for employment, for decent job, and for entrepreneurship. The 5th target is to eliminate all discrimination in education, including discrimination against people with disabilities, including discrimination against indigenous people, among others. 4.6 says ensure universal literacy and numeracy. 2 more of the targets says ensure education for sustainable development and global citizenship, in which it is said that by 2030, ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainability and ensure sustainable lifestyles, including human rights and gender equality. In terms of universities, what can universities do? What can higher education institutions do to ensure the advancement of this SDG 4? Number 1, I need to note that there is a yearly celebration of the International Day of Education. It's a policy commitment of the whole world that on the 24th of January of every year, we celebrate the role of education for peace and for development. This is a policy strategy promoting this SDG 4. This year, 2022, the focus was on changing course and transforming education. And by 2023, the Education Day shall be focused on the theme of education is a human right, a public good, and a public responsibility. I believe that this strategic policy decision of having a day in the year to celebrate education is one way of promoting the SDG 4. I hope that we all be connected to this. The second strategic action or policy action by higher education institutions to drive the SDG 4 is through the following: through teaching, through program and course development, through research, and through outreach activities. I believe that institutions in Africa are aware of all these targets for SDGs 4, and they use all these 4 which I've just mentioned to ensure that it's being achieved. Strategy number 3 that institutions of higher learning are employing is by reviewing their curricula. I've been saying that for many institutions in Africa, we've inherited a curricula from many of the colonial for authorities in the past. And it's very important that we review our curricula. There's a need for curricular reforms in view of SDGs 4. This new curricula that we are emphasizing will promote quality, ensure that education is relevant to our development. It will ensure that we find out some learning outcomes that can help us as individuals to contribute to development. The totality of the focus of the curricula being developed for Africa today is that there's a need to promote skills and competencies. There's also the need to ensure that people are committed to lifelong learning. The last thing I'm going to say, the last strategic policy that institutions in Africa are doing is that institutions in Africa are now developing some institutional policies targeted at achieving the goals of the SDGs 4. Some of these strategies are strategies that are focused on institutional access, quality assurance, people with disabilities, gender policies, policies on flexible pathway of learning, and policies for research. By all these policies that institutions in Africa are evolving within their institutional setup, they are helping to contribute to the achievement of the goals of the SDG 4. I know that I have just 5 minutes. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to make this contribution. Thank you very much.
Very much. Thank you very much, Professor, for teasing that out. I really would encourage all of us to look at the SDG 4 when we do, because we're part of research. But one of the areas of futures of education, which we're promoting really well, is lifelong learning. And that's exactly what we're doing with our RISE program. You know, this is what we're doing. So thank you very much. Professor Rita Orid, are you still connected?
Yes,
Hello?
I am. Yes, I am connected, please.
Yes. Thank you so much. Can we see you? Oh, perfect. Thank you. I'm sure yours is very early in the morning.
Exactly. 3 a.m. here.
So thank you for joining. Okay. A quick question is, we with digital transformation in the world, and Africa is trying to leapfrog. So could you please share with us what are the new dynamics for digital transformation for social justice in Africa? Are we there yet? If not,
Yes.
how do we get there?
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. Before actually taking on this question on digital transformation in Africa, are we there yet and how do we get there? Let me establish that digital transformation for social justice is a very complex term that requires multiple bullets to be able to solve the problem of social injustice. So before that, let me actually define what is social justice, as I'm going to be talking about it today. It is a view that everyone deserves equal economic, political, and social rights and opportunities. And social injustice, which is a bit of the opposite, is when an action is taken that is infringing upon a group's rights or marginalize the opportunity or treat them unfairly. On the other hand, digital transformation for social justice is what I define as designing, deploying, and using technology to drive social justice. So, and looking at Africa, there are so many things that have been done or that are in pipeline already happening. However, we are not exactly there at the moment. I will give a few examples of what are already happening in Africa. But before I get that, let me elaborate on some of the manifestations of social injustice in Africa. And then that will lead me to what we can do to actually tackle them. The biggest 3 manifestations of social injustice as we see today in Africa is in political inequality, social inequality, and economic inequality. Africa have not been able to benefit from the quick development of digital economy due to the existing barriers, like I mentioned, the political, social, and economic inequality that weaken the skills and who gets to participate in this innovation and Industry 4.0. So going by this, if we look at, take each of these themes, political inequality, one after the other, I look at that, you can see that politics is actually, my friend who said that politics is what drives every other thing in the world, right? If we look at Africa today, the political instability is a very big problem across many countries in Africa. Things keep changing, government change. There's a lot of unrest in many places. And this actually in no small measure has a very telling effect on the development of the people. So how do digital transformation come into play a role here? It does actually have a major role to play, one on who gets voted and who is voting. Consider that most of us in Africa live in a very remote area and there's a big class of people, right? So during politics, who can actually vie for office? The cost of vying for office and doing politics is very, very huge. So that actually limits who gets involved and who can get involved in politics. And likewise, voting. Many people are still yet till today not able to exercise their fundamental right of selecting who is going to be their leader, even in a democratic setting like so many African countries are practicing. So with digital transformation coming into play, this can actually reduce these barriers or remove them and get everybody, get the public, irrespective of your class and everything, involved both in voting and getting voted for. Let's take, for example, a critical example is, think of Obama in 2008, I guess, if I remember the year correctly. That was the first time we see the role of digitization, the role that technology can play in politics, right? Obama was the first example of a president in the modern time that actually took the full effect of the modern technology, the social media, the SMS, the emailing to do his campaign and raise funds. This in no small measure contributed a lot to his popularity. And not only was he given fair opportunity like every other candidate, which wouldn't have been actually possible for somebody from a less deserving group like him, but he boycotts most of the major media agencies that the doorkeepers and was able to get his messages heard by the electorate who are actually responsible for selecting the people. If we undermine the power of digitizing things, we also watch again what is going on for Nigeria that's going to have their election next year. Most of the people vying for offices are actually taken to social media to connect one-on-one with their people, telling them exactly what they plan to do. People are no longer looking at them in radios and television. They become like two separate parties. I was watching one of the presidential candidates, how he actually takes time to respond to the public's messages on Twitter. People can directly connect with him and air their views and criticize and suggest. And at the same time, they go on responding to these people. This wasn't the same Africa we had like 20 years ago. I was so impressed by that because, I mean, you can't imagine a presidential candidate coming up and being answerable to the public. That hasn't been a thing that in the past, but right now it is happening. And that basically means that he become accountable to the people. And this is where we talk about open governance. So Africa is actually getting there in a way that they're imbibing these new technologies, but it is not all yet. We are not there yet because how many of us Africans have access to broadband internet to be able to access these new technologies? Like I said, the social media, where the presidential candidates are engaging people. A lot of us are not able to access that yet. The cost of accessing it is still very high. Apart from that, most of the people in the remote villages do not have access to mass or data, to internet access at all. So these are some of the limiting factors that are still hindering Africa from getting there. Apart from that, we also have these inequalities in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity and other things that actually hinders people from getting involved and benefiting from this new technology. So I would say that Africa is actually doing a lot. We can see something recently in Uganda where they actually enacted a policy about the new fintech move in Uganda. This is actually a very good development, showing that Africa is waking up to tap into this new technology that is revolutionizing what is happening and equipping the young population. Apart from that, so looking at the young population, the few that actually have opportunity to gain the digital skill, see the move of Paystack within a few years of its founding, was actually acquired at 200 million or thereabout. So there's a lot going on in Africa right now. The young generations are seizing the opportunity of this digital transformation to create economic advantage for themselves, which wasn't exactly the same. So it is playing a role majorly in the economic side of things, empowering people, and also in the political side of things, getting people who hasn't been involved in politics originally involved, but there's still like a lot of barriers that need to be lifted, especially in the line of the government and the policy side, to actually direct this technology aright, to make sure it is not used for our own disadvantage. I would stop here. I can see that my time is up. Thank you.
Professor Orji, for those comments. I think, sorry. Apology. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I think COVID really brought about, really indicated the social injustice in Africa in terms of, connectivity, the infrastructure. And you can see countries like South Africa that have good infrastructure, really were able to do better than countries that didn't. So hopefully the African, governments will have policies and to actually, push this forward. But we also need the technologists and the experts. And I was glad you mentioned the data people, and also the president also mentioned artificial intelligence. These are the new paradigm. You cannot, Africa may not be able to achieve a lot of its, the African we want without really investing in this kind of infrastructure. So thank you so much. Our next speaker, our panelist, is Professor Akika Bari. She's the AS Vice President from North Africa. So, Professor, you're here. You want to come up here, or you can do it there, because, yeah. Okay, so your quick question is from your experience, experience, what are your experiences in the journey towards the green transition? Are we there yet? If not, how are we getting there? And how long will it take us to get there?
Thank you, Peggy. Good morning. I'm happy to be here with all the fellows and people joining the academy. So I'm going. Okay. So I have been asked to take you through a journey towards the green transition in a changing climate. So are you ready? Yes. So let's go. So, first of all, so we have been through, the COVID-19 pandemic. Now we are seeing what's happening with the conflict, the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, problems of climate change, problems of ecological crisis. So we have a number of crises that are taking place. And this, in fact, is an opportunity for change. And unless we see these problems happening, and that we take opportunity to make these changes and to transform, we are talking about green transition. For me, I would like to talk about green transformation. It is completely different, where we can see some of the seeds of transformation that are happening, that will take place and will help us to change. So let's see what we can do in order to move on the continent. First of all, there was this study that was each year, the World Economic Forum undertake, a survey just to see what are the most severe risks that are taking place. And here, this is what came out. So it is changing from year to year. And it's interesting with all the changes that happened with the COVID and with now the conflict that is taking place. How the ranking, but climate is always coming first. Then we have extreme weather, biodiversity loss there. I mean, the environmental and social concerns are coming first. This is very interesting how people are perceiving the risks. Social cohesion, erosion, livelihood crisis, infectious diseases, human environmental damage, natural resources crisis, and we have problems related to the natural resources, and water comes first, the debt crisis, and geo-economic confrontation. When it comes to Africa, we are seeing already an overshoot. We are consuming more, since I think 2010 or a little bit after, more than the resources that we have. So we are having, a major problem that we have to pay attention to this. Okay, I'm sorry. What is green transition? What is the meaning of green transition? The green transition is a social change strategy that will allow us to turn the current environmentally unsustainable global situation into a new sustainable paradigm that drives development and peace, aiming to improve the living conditions of all. And this can come through promoting a sustainable urban future and combating climate change through different specific action, such as reducing the greenhouse gas emission. We know, and this is what IPCC, and it is interesting, IPCC and the problem of climate have been working more than 30 years, putting science first. And it's showing that it is not only, that human impact that is happening, that is affecting, the global surface temperature. So we are responsible for what is happening, and we have to pay attention. So you see, the global, the natural problems, and the impact of human. But also what we are seeing is that we are living in the Anthropocene. And so we are already facing problems with the land system change, the biogeochemical flows, nitrogen, phosphorus, but also this is the first time that science is showing that we have reached the planetary boundaries for water. This is very important to have in mind, because I'm going to focus a lot on water and climate, and this is something that I want you to keep in mind. The second point is that, when we talk about decarbonization, this is what the Paris Agreement is saying, that we should reach the net zero by 2050. But that means that we have to cut emission by half every decade. And that, we have to start bending the curve by the curve of CO2 by 2020. I don't know if we really have started, and reaching the net zero emission by 2050. What's interesting, so human carbon emission is through the reducing our consumption of fossil fuel. But then also you have the contribution of land. And that means also we have realized how much agriculture is also contributing to climate change, and that we need also to turn the agriculture from being a source of carbon emission to being, a sink. And so this is the change that have to take place, and this needs a lot of efforts. When it comes to Africa, Africa contributes less than 4% to the global green gas emissions, less than 4%. But it is the most vulnerable region in the world. And 7 of the most vulnerable countries to climate shocks in the world are in Africa. So it's interesting that, we are contributing the less, but we are also the most vulnerable region of the world. And this is related to the fact that, it is mostly related to the type of activities and more related to agriculture production. This is showing, the hotspots, and you see that that one that comes first in the United States, China, but Africa is contributing really very little to the carbon emission. And also not only globally, but also per capita, except South Africa that is coming just before, China. it's interesting also. But when it comes per capita, then, you know, like the Middle East countries, like Qatar is coming first. It's also interesting. This is where the World Cup is taking place. And when we look at the historical greenhouse gas emissions trends for Africa, it's also interesting to see the contribution of agriculture, of buildings, energy system, industry, transport. So this is where we have to act. And so we are going a little bit to focus on agriculture and energy. The key risk for Africa increase with increasing global warming, it's problem related to biodiversity loss and ecosystem disruption, mortality and mobility, and reduced food production from crops, fisheries, and livestock. And this is going to impact, I mean, livelihoods and so on. And we have seen that, the Horn of Africa is experiencing one of the most important acute food insecurity emergency that is, happening. And more than 36 million people are facing risks of death. And this is going to impact, so we have problems with the livestock, increasing food prices, and more than 16 million people that don't have enough water for drinking, cooking, and cleaning. So the grand challenges on the continent, and for me, there are water challenges. When it comes for water, when there are about more than 400 million people that are lacking access to water, more than 600 million people lacking access to safe sanitation, the problem of food insecurity, and number of people that are undernourished, and the problem of energy, only 40% of the people that have access to energy. So there are a lot of people that are in the dark. And all this is, of course, exacerbated by climate change. One thing that was quite interesting coming through the IPCC report, and that now more and more it was a focus on climate and energy, saying green gas emission is about mitigation, and water. Some of the people were talking about water is about adaptation, but we are more and more realizing that water is also very important, not only for adaptation, but for mitigation as well. And that, there are a number of people that are, I am quoting some of the people, because I found interesting what they said, that, for example, the IPCC, that the big transition are constrained by water, whether it's energy transition, the urban infrastructure transition, or ecosystems. And we had to invest in water that can make really, a sustainable development goal flourish, and it drives climate mitigation as well as adaptation. So this is something very important and this is what science helps us to understand. The role of, for example, water in not only climate adaptation, but mitigation. The water is the foundation for successful mitigation action. Many of the transformation needed to reach climate emission neutrality depend upon a reliable access to fresh water. The functioning of freshwater system are essential for climate mitigation through measures like reforestation, restoration of degraded ecosystems, bioenergy. And the water sector offers untapped mitigation potential through climate smart water management, for example, by reducing emissions of carbon, methane, and nitrous oxides that emanate, for example, from wastewater management and or mismanagement of drained wetlands. And climate mitigation measures fundamentally depend on impact of freshwater resources and the water cycle. So climate and water are very much interlinked, and this is very important to keep in mind. It has also policy implication. Transition to green and renewable energy sources is not something going easy to, it comes at a heavy cost, but it is necessary. But we need also to sequence the transition, and there are cost adjustments. So we need to continue and support actively implement policy that could reduce the pace of carbon emission, and we need to build climate resilient and low carbon economies. But we need global cooperation and partnership. We need intra-Africa collaboration and trade in energy. microeconomic policies and agriculture practices and policies that will support and create a sustainable green revolution. One important thing is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. This is also going to boost Africa growth through the lowering tariffs of intra-African trade. It can stage a green innovation-led economic recovery by investing in climate-smart agriculture, and this can leverage digital technological innovation and improved farming practices. So these are different kinds of adaptation options for Africa. I'm not going to go through. You can find them in the IPCC report. And these are the total African, contribution of the different countries to adaptation and mitigation, the finance that is needed, but much more is needed. So we can move from climate risk to climate resilient development. And this is also through help through also justice. And I wanted to refer to what you were saying yesterday about social justice, but also through equity. So, but there are a number of things that needs to be taken in place. There are different options. I'm going to go very quickly. We need much more storage on the continent and water storage. We don't have enough storage when we compare, I mean, Africa to Europe or to United States. It's about 200 cubic meter per capita when, for example, in the United States, it's more than 6,000 cubic meters. So we need to store water in small, medium-sized, large, and in the soil. Soils are very important. It's a very important storage compartment, and in aquifers. We need to work, for example, like there is a lot of hydropower development that can take place. This is the example from the Grant Inga in DRC, but also, I mean, Felix was just mentioning, I mean, the Great Renaissance Dam that can be also an opportunity for selling energy to the neighboring countries. So there is, I mean, really, I mean, by developing this, it's big potential. The Great Green Wall in that was also, I mean, they have started, I mean, at the beginning building this green wall across Africa, but now it seems that it is changing and more going for harvesting, water harvesting techniques, greenery protection, and improving indigenous land use techniques, but it will be helpful to have this barrier across the continent. And also a range of agricultural water management options, moving from rain-fed to irrigation. And I'm going to focus on the green water, that is the water that is in the soil. So not only, I mean, on the blue water, that is irrigation, because, I mean, this is where there is a big potential. And this is also what, again, science is showing us. And we were talking about social justice, one second, Peggy, that, you know, this question of upwind green flows that are moving from one place, by better understanding how this is happening, not only looking at what is happening on the soil, but in the atmosphere, and transport of through the water cycle. You know, the moisture that is being transported from one place to another. So, for example, when we talk about the what happened in the floods in Pakistan, is it just because of Pakistan, or it is some waters coming from far away? So these linkages, and you see this problem. I mean, these different scales. Where, I mean, the moisture, so also by better understanding how this vapor is moving from one place to another, is we will come to another kind of justice. So there are a number of things that science is showing us, and the academy, of course, have a big role to play by supporting, young scientists in order to have this better understanding and how things and the climate envy, that we have just one hydrological cycle all over the world. It's not. There are different small hydrological cycles, but it is just one. Let me move on. And there are different kinds of option of adaptation in French, but just to show, you know, how we can move from incremental to systematic to transformational. And I'm interested in all the transformations, using of the use of the soils, and also we have to keep in mind also the migration of people. Don't look too much of this, but this is all the options through nature-based solutions, how the nature can help us in order to improve all this, this sequestration of carbon and having a better environment, moving from a linear economy to a circular economy. Wastewater and fecal sludge have a very important role to play because we can reuse, we can use the wastewater for different purposes, but also the sludge for energy and so on, and recover the phosphorus. So they are. And one thing also for me, as I said, ruptures, this is what we have to keep in mind. The model that we have in mind is the traditional toilet, flushing toilet. We can do, and with the Bill and Melinda Gates, this reinvented toilet initiative have been showing that we can do things completely differently. And that toilets can be transformed like small wastewater treatment plants. We can recover all this and make energy, water, recover phosphorus, and so on. So what I want to have in mind that we have a model that have been, used all over, that we have to, break and to have a different. And on the continent, we can, propose and support this different kind of development. The source to sea management is also very important. African cities, and there is a study where, I think it's about 48 cities, how we can leapfrog and move from, to water-sensitive cities that are more resilient to climate change. And also, for example, here we are in Cape Town, and you remember day zero. And so the number of cities that have been changing, moving from, and Nairobi also is taking this path, and number of cities, like by diversifying their water portfolio through different options and different. So these cities have identified what are the problems that are facing and how through community engagement, flood mapping, tree planting, and so on, they can change different adaptation to climate change options. And for example, it goes to waste management. You have been asking me to talk about the journey. The journey is not something, so just follow me on this journey, Peggy. It's not just, a few minutes. I'm going to finish very quickly. Energy efficiency and so on. You think it's just, okay. It's important. There are so many things to talk about. I'm sorry. So transitioning, it requires sobriety and behavior change. And this is the most difficult thing. And this involves food, housing, work, and limiting all types of waste. And we have to change the way, even when, our behavior, our relationship with environment has to change. Whole new vision that is needed, but involves the public, authorities, local authorities, civil society, and the media. It's also, we need, training in the ecological transition. This is also something that the academy can do, and climate. And we have to act immediately and solicit nature less and to live differently. So SCI has different kinds of roles to play. But Peggy, I'm not going to go through all this, but what is important, this is important to support the AU 2063 and the UN agenda and contribute to the socio-economic transformation of Africa. And this is more related to, what the academy can do by establishing a skills network in partnership with African universities, developing all the skills that we need, and not only, and in on different topics. And so the knowledge triangle, I think you are familiar with this partnership between different, and what is important, something that I was talking about the relation between policy, science, and society, because I was a scientist, I moved to the political arena, and I have seen how much this is really needed and important. And so really this dialogue with the academy has to have this kind of dialogue with the policymakers. Conclusion. Finally, don't worry. We are coming to the end. There is a real change can only be achieved through an inclusive and collaborative approach by all sectors of society. And you know which one of them. And this is and to prioritize risk reduction, equity, justice in decision-making and investment. We need a scientific revolution in Africa that will transform the lives. Governments and negotiators need to place water at the core of climate policies. Climate change and water risks are intricately linked to food security concern. There is a need for a sustainable, resilient-based agricultural revolution in the vast water-scarce regions in Africa in order to avoid large-scale famine and food insecurity. It will not be possible to reach the SDG in Africa without a uniquely African water revolution based on green water. We need to educate a new generation of leaders and managers on innovative methods and technology adapted to climate change. There is a problem of governance that is one of the most important that will promote reforms and technologies and business models. We need to engage in policy. I think we can all have this kind of work with practitioners, facilitate capacity building. We need integration, but also system thinking and a better understanding of the interdependence of climate, biodiversity, and people, and integrate natural, social, and economic science. And we need adequate finance and political support. Thank you. And sorry, I have taken more time that was allocated to me.
You don't want to have a professor and you have somebody who is passionate. You can imagine it's double, you can complete the sample. So thank you so much. There's so much that we can learn, and I think this is a way forward. An academy can do so much. There's so many, moving parts of climate. We need climate scientists, but we also need climate policies. But above all, we also need to have society that understands the climate issues. So this is a very, burden area, adaptation mostly, and mitigation. And she just presented that we only produce 4% of the pollution, but we suffer most of it. So there's a lot that the scientists can do. And, this is the paradigm. This is where all the money is going to come from. So we must take advantage of it. So Professor, thank you so much. I think what we'll do is we'll organize a webinar and you can pour out your heart now. Yeah, you have webinar, we all connect, and then you can pour out. So thank you so much. Thank you. And this is what the academy is. We have the experts, the academy has all the experts in Africa, and we should harness their potential. Yeah. So thank you very much. I'm not sure whether our colleague from China is connected, the Minister Counselor. Are you? If not, then yeah, I think time is past. Any burning question? Anybody has a question to ask of any of the panelists? Any question from the audience? Yes, there's one up there. I think somebody will have to help me with the microphone. Thank you. Okay.
It's just a comment. My name is Mafongoya from University of KwaZulu-Natal. I think what we need is to think in a nexus kind of thing. Climate, water, food, and energy, instead of computerizing these things. It's just a comment I'm observing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Food, water, energy nexus. In fact, the last, was it 5 years ago, the UN report was on this. But I wonder whether Africa has moved further on that. So, Professor, I'm giving you cohort, huh?
No, but this
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah, so let's run a few webinars and, tease out, some of the issues, areas of collaboration. EU is here, all our colleagues are here. How do we're looking at second level of Arise. These are issues which we can take in the level of Arise, and create those experts. Any more question? Anybody? Okay. So Professor, we only have a few minutes. We're just asking you to have concluding remarks. Yeah. What do you want us to take home from what you said in maybe a minute or two. So Professor Oyewole, what would be your take-home message for us? Are you connected?
Yes, I'm connected.
Thank you.
My take-home message will not just talk about the SDG 4, but also to connect to the need to promote research and fund research in Africa. Education is very important, and as we all know, education is facilitated through research. And when you look at research in the continent today in Africa, we have the problems of deteriorating infrastructures, problems of aging scientists, and even the problems of relevance of the research that are being carried out within Africa. And people have mentioned that most of the research being carried out in Africa, they are research supported from outside Africa. And this has the challenge of relevance. And I will just connect it to the second question you wanted me to talk about. What can we do to promote funding of research within the African continent? Do we have some examples that we need to follow? And I will just mention two major examples. Countries in Africa are now setting up trust funds for research and higher education within their countries. And in this model, they enact laws that ensures that profits from companies and businesses in their countries made contributions to higher education and to research. And I know that in many countries now, this is a viable system through which research is being funded. One, it is not just a once and for all contribution to research, it's a recurrent contribution, annual contribution to research. Such contribution to research is backed up by law. And in many of those countries, organizations are set up to manage such research funding processes. And the research funding is competitively organized within the various nations. I believe that this is a model of funding research and funding higher education within Africa that countries in Africa should be encouraged to emulate. The second one, which I will just speak briefly, which I believe is very important, is the example given by the World Bank. Currently, the Association of African Universities is managing the African Center of Excellence project in Central and West Africa. The important thing about this is that the research funding is focused on 5 important areas that are necessary for African development: science, technology, engineering, mathematics, agriculture, and health. And in the course of this, they also focus on environment, applied social science, and education. When you look at this model of funding for research, it covers curricular reforms in universities. It covers research infrastructures. It ensures that researchers are connected to the industry. It also covers ensuring that there is networking among researchers within the continent and within the institutions. I think that these are 2 important models for funding research in the continent. If I just mention one more that we need to start to do so that Africa will not depend on the North all the time for support for research that are carried out, we need to start encouraging endowments for research in our continent. And it's a good way of appealing to our communication organizations, financial houses, and other big financial organizations in the continent to ensure that we are not just committing funds to support music and other social activities. Let us know that we need research for our development in Africa. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor. And thank you for your commitment that you are, even connect us. Thank you so much. Professor Orji, are you still there?
Yes,
Professor Rita?
Yes,
right.
I'm here.
So in 1 minute, what would you like us to take home?
Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah. So I want to conclude what I have said by saying that digital transformation is no longer just an option. It is a necessity. It is compulsory for any serious nation that wants to move forward and close the gap in inequality and solve the social injustice problem. And Africa can leverage on the vast potential of the young population. For example, the median age of African youths, the median age of Africa is around 20 years. That is an enormous number of youths that are ready to work, that have untapped potential that can be tapped. But this is not happening at this moment. Most of these youths are either underemployed or, in the worst case scenario, unemployed. In fact, half of the youth population of Africa are either unemployed or underemployed. And this is telling on African development. So look at India, countries like India, if I tie it back to the second question, countries like India have made a major leap in technology. And what happened was, like, just a few years ago, India made a decision to go into digital identification. From there, they built up on top of it to create digital payments and make data accessible to the general populace. And we can see what we have in India today. They are the tech hub. The young population are tapping into this opportunity. We are no longer talking about unemployment, because people get employed and work at different countries, global countries, irrespective of their location at home. Same can happen in Africa, where we have younger population, even more than India. I'm not talking about developed countries like Canada, like US. I'm talking about countries in the same level of development like India and Brazil, who are currently tapping into this digital transformation. I believe Africa can do the same. We can transform the global population of youth we have into an enormous potential by giving them the tech skills, providing that opportunity for them to get the tech skill they need. But this cannot happen by government just leaving everything to the private. We need, in the best case scenario, private-public partnership. There are three key things that need to happen for this digital transformation to take effect. The first one is investment in the digital infrastructure. The government really needs to be strategic and consciously invest in infrastructure to drive this digital transformation. The second one is that after this investment, it needs to be democratized. Democratization, as I use it here, represents the 3 A's. It has to be accessible, it has to be available, and it has to be affordable to everyone. What is happening at the moment is that we have it in some places and it can be afforded by only a few. That is not what I mean. I mean where everybody can access it, everybody can afford it, irrespective of your location or your financial status. The third thing that needs to happen after democratization is the appropriate policy need to be set in place by the government, right? Whatever is good also have the flip side of it, right? People should not take advantage of this digitization and do things that are inappropriate. Most of the countries that have actually worked actually have the digitization in place, but at the same time have appropriate policy to actually guide it. Think about Industrial 4.0. There are so many technologies that are leading right now that every youth should take advantage of. Think about the AI, think about the Internet of Things, the robotics, the 3D printing, and others. How can we kind of create a tech hub where our youth can acquire these skills free? Can we make it in the universities that universities have access to internet and broadband and have access to give practical skills to this young population, so that the time they are graduating, people are not just graduating with certificate, but these skills are made compulsory so that irrespective of your course, you're graduating with a skill that can give you a job. That can not only give you a job, but it can make you to create a job, be a job creator of your own. That is what is happening in places like India, where we are at the same level of development. And I think Africa have enormous potential to achieve this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I think this is a role for everybody. The government should invest in the infrastructure. We cannot go put all the broadbands, it's the government's responsibility. But I think we scientists also need to give the guidance. We need to have the appropriate policies. We need to work together. And also the communities that tap all those, intellect and innovation that are in there to actually work it. Without digital transformation, I think Africa will continue to lag behind. And we have the potential and we can do it. So thank you very much, Professor Orji, for that. But please come to Africa, yeah? As a diaspora, and we need people like you, and we're going to set up a network of diasporans, particularly for digital transformation. Thank you so much. Thank you for the time. The last but not the least, there's a professor. You've already told us the journey.
No, I think a lot has already been said, but what is important, I think, and again, I come back to the what we have been through with the pandemic and with the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, that we realize that we have to count on our own resources. This is what is important. We have to develop our own model. We have to rethink our food systems. And this is very important because, we have seen with COVID, for example, people don't want to eat, all this, the hamburgers and this model that is being developed there. So we have to come back to our fundamentals and we have to work, and science has to convince the policymakers on all this. Work, climate and water for me goes hand in hand. So it's very important to keep this in mind, and that working together and developing our own resources. Infrastructure is very important in all the different topics that we have been talking about. And also, our cities, our infrastructure should be planned in order to address these problems of climate change, floods, droughts, and so on. So this is the planning. And thinking at different scales also is very important. The development of our territories is very important. So working all together, putting all our brains together, it is what will make us, be more ready, but we have an opportunity in order to make this change happen. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. It's been quite an exciting, panel discussion. So please, they're available. You can send your messages to them and they can answer some of the pertinent questions. But one question I ask, how many of you in this room know that there's going to be heads of states meeting Biden in Washington? How many of you know? They're going to meet him. All right. Have you sent any information to the head of state to talk about science? Have you talked, Yeah. Have you? I know. No. You see, this is where the scientists sleep. What are they going to talk about in Washington? They're going to talk about trade. They're going to talk about what? COVID recovery. They talk about what else? But it's all science. You're not there. You don't even know about it. So please send a little note to your Minister of Science if they're going, or your head of state through your ambassadors. Foreign ministers are going with their presidents. And I know a few presidents who are going. But this is why the African Union, the AAS wanted to organize a meeting on the side, but the logistics was a bit too much. But we're going to make a point there. They should talk about science. Identify one of the champions in Africa to talk about science. There are supposed to be 10 heads of states who are champions in science. Do you even know them? Who's going to talk about science in Africa? So when they come back, they know the importance of science, that all that they're going to talk about, infrastructure is driven by scientists and engineers. The food security is by scientists and engineers. Poverty reduction is by scientists and engineers. But we scientists are not there. So we need this science policy, society interface. So please, with that note, I'd like to say thank you very much for, being part of this. And we'll have the next session. But I've been asked by my honorable team that we need to have a photo, of all of us. So they're going to direct us while we're having the photo. On the podium here or where? Anyway, please come forward and give us the instruction. Thank you so much and enjoy your coffee break.
So we'll go for the photo session. Can you hear me? Okay. We're going to start with the photo session. The first group is AIS General Assembly participants, followed by ARISE, AIS Fellows, ARISE, APTI, CR4D, and Shaili is right outside. She's going to guide us how we're going to take the photo sessions. Then after that, we're going to have now the tea break. Okay, thank you. And for our online participants, the break is going to be a little longer, approximately 40 minutes, because we're going to divide the room. Thank you.